We are in the second half of IPL 2025 and we have visitors from all over the world watching the matches all over India. But one particular visitor who would have enjoyed playing T20 cricket if it was in vogue in those days in the 1980s is none other than Mike Veletta, the former Australian wicketkeeper batsman who was member of the second Tide Test in Chennai 1986 and also a member of the victorious 1987 Australian World Cup team under Allan Border that they defeated England in the final in Kolkata in November 1987. Without taking much time, let's listen to Mike Veletta and his stories and especially talk about the Tide Test and the scenes on the field, off the field, and who can forget Dean Jones and his magnificent double hundred in that heat of Chennai. And of course, Allan Border leading Australia to victory in 1987 World Cup. Welcome to India and welcome to Mumbai, Mike. What brings you here? How has the stay been so far?
Thanks, GK. What brings me here? It's been since 1989 we last came to India. Western Australia played a side in Tamil Nadu. It was a reciprocal arrangement between Chemplast and Kalis, a West Australian company. Tamil Nadu played in Western Australia in 1988 and we in 88 and we reciprocated in 89. So we played through Chepak, we played at Bangalore and we played at Coimbatore. It was a great tournament and we had a great chance only 3 days ago to play against the Madras Cricket Club in Chennai in a game organised by the Madras Cricket Club and our great host Abdul Ekram, who is part of Austrade here in India. So the opportunity was too great to sort of let go, and our good friends Peter Cutler and Will Cutler were guests that invited it or arranged it with Abdul. So it was a great chance to come back. It's been too long and I promise it won't be that long before we come back here again. The country has changed significantly from my recollections back then. Madras, as the Tide Test was played in oppressive heat, as we all know. I remember the ground almost had no grass on it. I remember, and talking to the Madras Cricket Club, it was a year of drought and very dry conditions. Hence, the wicket was obviously very dry, the outfield was very dry, there was extreme heats. And the efforts of Dean Jones, you will recall, that he batted beyond belief for that 200. And without recalling his statistics, all I recall as a supporter of that team, I must have been good at handing out drinks because I spent a lot of time supporting the Australian team throughout my career. But what we used to do is when Dean came off the field, we'd undress him, put him in the shower, sit him down, dry him off, put his clothes on, his protective equipment back on and put him in the right direction to the wicket and off he went. So an outstanding achievement, but more so to the point that Allan Border, courageous captain he was, and Bob Simpson as coach, very well researched into Indian conditions. We actually only took all of India's wickets. I think India took 12 of ours, so we declared in both innings. So very courageous Allan Border. Australia was a very inexperienced side and we're only starting to forge our way back in world cricket after significant retirements and lots of people playing in the South African series, so we lost a lot of senior players. So to full credit Allan Border and Bobby Simpson, they had the courage to declare on the last day, giving India a run chase, and it was a fantastic game. Something great to remember and be part of.
Mike, does it still give you goosebumps when you think of you being part of history? Only 2 tests have ended in ties, and you were part of the second Tide history. Does it still give you goosebumps when you think of the Tide Test?
Well, the other day Madras Cricket Club hosted us at the ground, so we were able to walk out there and remembered all the conditions, remembered what happened, remember where Greg Matthews bowled from, and we tried to remember where Steve Waugh's fumble and misfield going into the last minutes of the game. We remember the conditions around Maninder Singh facing the second last ball. I was asked the other day whether he edged it or not. Of course, I don't know the answer to that because I was off the field. But I spent a lot of time on the field. You can imagine Dean Jones in the first innings scoring those runs. He couldn't partake in the rest of the game in many respects. So I fielded for Jones. I fielded for Ray Bright, who likewise went in as night watchman. So it gave me the chance to spend a lot of time on the field, so which I really enjoyed. But it does give me goosebumps to think I'm so fortunate, and the great fortune of playing with Allan Border. I mean, a courageous captain as he was, and a fantastic leader, an awesome person. So I was very grateful to be part of that era where Australia was starting to resurge. I'm like most players at the end of their career, I'm less satisfied I didn't play enough for Australia, and clearly comes down to my performances more so than anything. But to be part of that Ashes of '89 was also a great experience for me, and to be part of the '87 World Cup, it's something I'll never forget, and friends that are forged for life.
I'll come to the '87 World Cup victory in a while, but we all have heard stories of Dean Jones and what he had to go through on the field, vomiting and whatnot, that he couldn't even stand. But why did he have to go through all that to score that memorable double hundred in that heat? Why did he have to do that? Can you explain?
Well, I guess it, in many respects, Australians are cut of that cloth in that it's about, back in the, particularly in the 80s, it's probably changed a lot now. It's about, it's about tough and macho and, nothing can beat me. And Dean's a Victorian, they're built of the same sort of stuff and very competitive. Interestingly enough, and the number 3 position had not been consolidated for Australia. As you know, Boone and Marsh were the openers, Border was 4, and then we went on to, Richie was in the team then. So the number 3 was between Dean and myself. Neither of us had performed exceptionally well leading into the first test, so it was still up in the air. Dean got the nod in terms of batting 3. Why did he do it? Because his position as a test player, without talking to Dean about it, but I saw that as his chance to really cement himself as a great test player. Although I think it was only his 3rd test. It was a great opportunity for him to really grab that opportunity at number 3 and make the most of it. And many of you would have heard the story when he was so ill and he said to Border, he said, I'm ill, I gotta leave the field. And I think Alan's response might have been, that's fine, you go and we'll get a tough Queenslander out. So for him, that was the fire that fueled him on to keep batting, to the point where he obviously lost control of all his bodily functions. And it wouldn't happen these days. It's just not safe for the player to go through that. But the oppressive heat, but also the ground, the heat was almost like radiating off the ground as much as it was from the sun above, as we know how hot Madras can be. So I just think it was an innings of courage that Dean was never going to give in. So until finally his body couldn't handle anymore, but it was outstanding, and we all remember it many, many years on.
We still do. Have you seen any better knock in such difficult conditions played by anyone else, or was it the best that you have seen?
Yeah, it's difficult because all innings have something special about it, and we were talking earlier about Steve Waugh's 100 at the Oval, I think, when he could hardly walk. There's a lot of courageous innings. The fact that it was a 200 in those conditions, without a doubt, and Dean's first test in India, I can't recall anything sort of more courageous on the cricket field in many respects. So, it's challenging, and the fact that it was a tied test, the whole game was surrounded by, if you like, dramatics. Greg Matthews bowling with his jumper and his cap on. Ray Bright scored some runs at night watchman, and I remember him coming in and just laying on the ground like he was almost out of it. Jeff Marsh batted very well. David Boone batted. Border got 100.
Yes.
So there's a lot of things surrounding that test that gave us a lot of confidence. And dare I say it, interestingly enough, Madras is the scene where we started our World Cup campaign the year after. So if you think about the confidence we got out of that test, it's something that basically carried us through to for years to come as an Australian side.
What made Bob Simpson work with the squad with Allan Border and build the side that later went on to become the dominant force like the West Indies were in the previous years?
Yeah, by no means do we have that attack that the West Indies had in terms of 4 brutal fast bowlers that make life very difficult, but we had good balance. And Bob was a great foil for Allan because Bob was just a controlling person that wanted to just coach and teach people as a coach. And he was very well researched, very well connected. And what it did, it freed up Allan's time to be captain on the field, not have to worry about too much off the field, and play as a batsman. So it gave Allan the freedom to be able to do that. And Bobby was an outstanding coach in terms of fielding. He was so disciplined in his fielding, and it probably reflected in our performance the year after as Bob got his claws into the Australian side. Tactically, he was brilliant. So as a combined group, Allan and Bob were fantastic. And although I wasn't around when the next captain took over, I think it might have been Mark Taylor, maybe the dynamics changed a little bit, but for Allan and Bob, the dynamics worked perfectly well. The team were new, team were keen to learn and listen. So a great combination for the establishment of superb careers like Boone, Marsh, War, and a number of careers were forged from that era.
Unfortunately, you were not part of the tight test, but you were on the field doing the
Yes.
substitutes roles. But you did play a major role in Australia winning its first World Cup in 1987.
Yep.
How much do you remember of that, and how much did you value that World Cup victory when nobody thought that Australia,
Yep.
in its initial stages of Border and Bob Simpson era, will go on to win the World Cup?
Absolutely, you're right. Unheard of most of our players. We came to the World Cup with great expectations from within the group. I think close to 11 of the players have been to India the year before. Add Moody, O'Donnell, Zessers and Peter Taylor. It was a great combination. So we had great experience here in India from 12 months before. We just worked hard on our fielding, and Bobby had a very simple, and Allan had a very simple game plan. You remember Jeff Marsh scored runs, not at a great pace, but scored runs and anchored the innings. Boone was dynamic, so the balance of the team was fantastic. Craig McDermott was a leading wicket taker. Our spinners performed well. Border took the crucial wicket of Gadding, of course, in the final. But I do recall many events like we weren't staying far from the ground there in Kolkata. It took us a long time to get from the hotel to the ground through the bus, through the hordes of people. We were very fortunate to be as the Australian team to have the support of the Indians, because India had just lost to England in Bombay not soon before in the semi-final, and we had beaten Pakistan in Lahore. So that endeared ourselves to the Indian crowd. So we were relatively popular in many respects. But I recall walking out to bat and thought, if I'm going to deliver, this is my great chance. And I was very fortunate to have the opportunity. Many of my friends accused me of running Allan Border out, but so be it. AB's never ever accused me.
I was watching that final on television, and I still remember, how can Allan Border be run out?
Yeah.
Of all the people, why not? Why couldn't Mike Veletta have sacrificed?
Oh, not a good career decision, that's right. If I can recall correctly, I may have, and you may know more so, having seen the vision recently, I thought I swept it to the onside and we turned for two, and I said no, but Allan was too far gone to turn back. But others would say that it was a chance to bring Steve Waugh to the crease. So, as I said, Allan being a true team person would have been more than happy to bring Steve Waugh to the crease at the dying ends of that game. And I think we put on a fair few, Allan and I, so it was a great opportunity for me to bat with the captain.
Did you believe that the match was slipping away from you until Mike Gatting went for that shot?
Of course.
He was sweeping?
Of course. Gatting had the game under control. There was a moment early on, I'm pretty sure, that he hit Tim May to deep mid-on boundary. Steve Waugh caught it. I think I was fielding not far from him on the boundary, probably more mid-wicket square leg. And unfortunately his back foot just slipped and hit the rope. So that was a reprieve for Gatting, but Gatting had the game under control. England had a far more experienced side than us. Lamb, Gooch, Gatting, their bowling had a wealth of experience with Embry and Hemmings. So by far their side was far more experienced, particularly in Indian conditions. But we had a great belief, we had some fantastic bowlers. Simon O'Donnell was outstanding. Steve Waugh, you'll remember, Iceman reputation came in some of those games he bowled in back end. Both him and Simon had the slower ball. They really started to perfect that, and that was significant to our bowling attack. So we knew we had, through the middle of the overs, some really good sort of medium pace all-rounders that could contribute with bat and ball. So we had great balance, I thought, and everyone had a superb belief in terms of how we were playing. And the group, there was so many things that we displayed throughout that series that reflected in a good team effort, both on and off the field. So, for us, I think we had the ingredients for a successful side, and fortunately it fell for us.
How did that World Cup win change Australian cricket? Because 1983 World Cup, India won. It changed Indian cricket in a huge way. People took to cricket, and they have the examples of Rahul Dravid, Sachin Tendulkar taking to cricket as a profession because India won the World Cup, and they wanted to also win one World Cup one day. What did that do to you, to Australian cricket, the '87 World Cup win? And Australia went on to win 4 more times, 5 World Cup winners. Nobody has won that many.
No, that's right. But the other, if you think about the other times Australia won, their team has been outstanding. Not saying that ours wasn't, but their team has genuinely had world beaters in it. Fantastic captains, great bowlers. I mean, through McGrath, Warne, although he missed one of them, I know. But their batting was dynamic. I don't think the same could be said for our side of '87. It was more about everyone contributing in a fair way. How did it change? It's interesting, the other day in Madras when we were talking, and I think they were talking about, say, Roger Binney played in '83 and the rewards that the Indian government basically offered to some of the players back then, they were significant. And I said, well, I remember when we won the World Cup in 1987, I did get my bonus cheque of $930, so maybe not so significant. But having said that, for our players, it gave us a boost of confidence. For cricket in Australia, it's been long remembered, but in the end, if I recall back then, we left India eventually after a couple of days after the final, back to Australia, back to our states, back into Shield cricket. So life went on in many respects. There's no great change.
Life after cricket, you've been into coaching, you've been into administration. Say more about Mike Veletta after he stopped playing cricket.
Interesting. I've always worked outside of cricket. I've always studied. I joke that I turned a 3-year degree into 9 years, but I've always had property and commerce. And I still work in property and real estate in Western Australia. So I've always had that, and hence why I probably couldn't come over when there was a Tide Test reunion in 2001, if I can recall correctly. So I've always had something else to do outside of cricket, although I did coach Western Australia in 2001 to 2003. I'm back doing some coaching at a private school at the moment, which I'm really enjoying. So it's something that I've always wanted to go back into. So now I see my opportunity where in some respects that's probably my next challenge, coaching, impart some of my knowledge to some of these younger students that I'm working with. But I continue in property, so that's what I've done for many, many years. So I look forward to continuing in that field as well.
If I remember right, you were among the ones who used to strike at more than 100% strike rate. So would you have taken to T20 if you were around in the current era? Or how much has cricket changed from your playing days to now?
Thanks for the compliment in terms of my strike rate. I was never a power hitter by any stretch. If I can quote from one of Steve Waugh's book, is that I was probably one of those great improvisers. So I wouldn't have necessarily been hitting him down the ground for 6. It was about using the pace of the ball more so rotating the strike. Maybe I wouldn't say Mike Hussey because Hussey had a great power game as well. I would have had to work on that. I would have loved to play T20. For me as a batsman, it's an excuse to play bad shots in many respects, or to play a shot that you get dismissed on, where in previous lives it was your captain would berate you and say, why did you play that? Now you're almost gifted the opportunity to play shots that you wish to. So I would have loved it, would have loved the excitement of it, I would have loved the fielding of it. Things like Bobby Simpson taught us about the angles, cutting off the angles, cutting down the twos. Those sort of parts of the game really excite me. I'm hoping to impart to some of the kids that I'm sort of coaching now, some of those finer details of the game. You can remember running between wickets. Dean Jones, once again, great exponent. Ricky Ponting, great exponent. So they're the things that obviously are very important to the shorter version of the game. Although the heat here, sometimes you have to preserve your energy a bit more. I would love to have played T20 cricket, as most cricketers of my generation would. And the other thing, to play all around the world, is a grand opportunity for cricketers that continue to do that. So, yes, it would have been fantastic.
You mentioned about Mike Hussey, and I just wanted to recall this. He was here for this Chennai Super Kings game about 8 days ago.
Yep.
And he was coaching this youngster from Chennai Super Kings. He was showing him the shots with as a right-hander would do.
Yep.
And Mike Hussey being a left-hander, I asked him, "You're just doing it with as any right-hander would do." And normally the left-handed batsmen, when they coach, they go show them the left-hander's shots.
Yep.
And he said he started as a right-hander, but he loved Allan Border that he took to left-handed batting.
Yep.
So that's Mike Hussey, and
crazy,
amazing, isn't it?
It's crazy. It's
Mr.
crazy.
Cricket,
It's crazy.
Not for nothing, is Mr. Cricket.
It's crazy. It probably reflects that he was a long way ahead of his time, because you can imagine now you talk about pinch hitting, switch hitting. The other day is Mendes by right arm off spinner, left arm spinners. And I think John Buchanan was a great exponent that he wanted fielders to be able to throw right and left hander equally. So obviously that's the next generation of working on cricket, is to be able to do both left and right hand. But I recall that story of Hussey following Allan Border. It's a fair role model to follow, I might add.
Exactly, yeah. You have watched IPL in your trip here. You watched a match in Chennai. You watched a match yesterday at Wankhede.
Yep.
How did you like it?
I loved it. Many people have said it's in our terms in Australia, AFL is a great game, and they say the AFL Grand Final is probably the biggest event you'll go to, the loudest, most emotion, most noise, and many people said the IPL is like the AFL Grand Final on steroids. So now I've experienced it in Chennai and here in Mumbai, and I've got to say it was very loud. It was very, very loud. In Chennai, they gave everyone whistles. Whoever came up with that idea wasn't good for the crowd because it made a lot of noise. But it was fantastic just to see the start. I watched Lucknow training yesterday. They've got Justin as coach. They have their strength and conditioning person is West Australian. They're very well organised. But then I watched Chennai warm up, and they have a very different approach to warm ups and all that. So each themselves in terms of what goes with the team and makes them to work the best. It's probably been the way coaching has changed. It now sort of reflects that everyone is different, and you have to approach each player and each side differently. So just the contrasting ways that Chennai warmed up and Lucknow was quite noticeable for me.
You mentioned about Justin Langer being the head coach of LSG.
Yep.
You have quite a few Australians in this IPL right from its inception in 2008.
Yep.
And you have Punjab Kings have 5 players from Australia, coached by Ricky Ponting. And you have Glenn Maxwell and the likes of
Josh Inglis.
Josh Inglis, yes.
Yes, the finest keeper in the world, in my opinion. I am biased. He played cricket at my club.
Okay.
Fantastic player. I'm sort of glad that he's got an opportunity, because he is in world cricket. I think got a mark to play. Kerry is doing such a great job for Australia, so Josh is unfortunately have to bide his time. But I'm sure their selectors are keen to get him in, as they do in the one-day series, which they saw here in the World Cup. It's good to see. And Mitch played yesterday, so it was, and I opened with his dad for many, many years. We share the same coach. We stay close in Perth, so it's great to see Mitch doing so well over so many years. But same with Sean. Sean Marshall is an outstanding, elegant player that obviously treated the world with some of his shots. So it's good to see the Australians. But the Australians, I think, really enjoy coming here to play. And now I can understand, after many years not coming to India, I was so much looking forward to coming back and seeing the change. And walking through Chennai, walking through Mumbai in the recent days, it's incredible the change in terms of how organised, how clean. We went to the Maidan just before. We saw the talented young players. We sat and talked to them, and they're so well educated and they know the game inside out. It's been a great experience. Every day has been a superb experience that we've really enjoyed.
You just mentioned Josh Inglis, and he scored a century on Test debut, didn't he?
Yes, and it's incredible because even in the one-day series when Australia played Sri Lanka, and this is just a reflection of from an observer, Kerry and Inglis. So Josh was the keeper, and remember Kerry took some very good catches in the one-day series against Sri Lanka, and Josh was the first up to congratulate him. So the relationship between those two looks really strong, which is important, you know, because obviously Carey is such a fine team man and a very good wicket keeper and batsman, and Josh just realised he's going to have to bide his time. So that suggests a very good team harmony if everyone's getting on well in that respect.
Finally, Mike, you were in Chennai to watch the match. You walked into the ground where you played. You were part of the tightest history.
Yeah.
So much has changed in that stadium, isn't it? It is now there are so many gaps that you get good wind, breeze blowing across. And did you feel comfortable? Did you feel better this time?
I did, because if you can recall the Tide Test, when I walked out the other day, there was grass on the outfield, very different. And if I can recall, the wickets, the practice wickets, were on the ground, whereas now they don't appear to be. They're out the back, so very different. There's a swimming pool out the back as well for refreshments, which would have been very handy in those times. The stands, you're right, there's gaps between as opposed to concrete jungles.
Yes.
And the relief from the sea breeze across the Buckingham Canal, what a great relief from a breeze point of view, maybe not from an odour point of view.
That's right, yeah.
It was just an incredible experience, and as I said earlier, is that majority of us other than Border and maybe Richie had toured India before, so for every one of us it was a new experience, a wonderful experience. I've always loved Indian food, and I've loved embracing Indian culture and the people. I've got a lot of good Indian friends at home as well that I enjoy their company. So on my first tour I chose to have Indian food for lunch and dinner for many weeks until my stomach said it's time just to take a break. So, and that I did, but I'm back on the horse. I love Indian food, so coming back after so many years, as I said earlier, it won't be that long before I come back again. I'm looking forward to it.
Would love to have you back, Mike. Wonderful chatting with you. Thank you so much for your time, and have a safe flight back home.
It's all my pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jiko. Thank you. Cheers.